Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference channel. My name is Jesse Day. The next BRIC is January 21st and 22nd, 2024. Stay tuned for tickets. Today's guest is the author of Bubba's Guide to Trading Options and a 40-year veteran pro trader, as well as the founder of BubbaTrading.com, Mr. Todd Bubba Horwitz. Thanks for coming on the show.
Jesse, great to be back with you. Always a pleasure, and looking forward to our interview today.
Yeah, absolutely. I had an interview with you on my channel, Commodity Culture, that I found very enlightening. People really liked it. So excited to continue our conversation here. And I want to start with the debt ceiling debacle and how this is all going to end. I've just got a quote here from an article on CNN that says, the time frame to get the bill passed through both chambers of Congress and signed into law is extremely tight. Lawmakers are racing the clock to avert a catastrophic default ahead of June 5th. The day the Treasury Department has said it will no longer be able to pay all of the nation's obligations. What do you make of all this? Is this just a big circus, or is this actually a serious issue we should all be paying attention to?
Well, it's another joke, I guess. It's a bad joke. It's a bunch of rhetoric that is been the same always. You can bet you know what, that the Democrats and Republicans are sitting in the back room sipping a bottle of scotch with a cigar, figuring out how they're going to screw the American taxpayer once again. They take in enough tax revenue now at $350 billion a week to pay their debts. They don't have to default. It'd be nice to see them have to live on a budget like citizens have to live on, so we stop this. I would hope they would default. That would be, if I could put us in a perfect world, I'd love to see them default and see the American people finally wake up and decide that the imbeciles that are running this country are just that, imbeciles.
Yeah, and it seems that we are in a situation where government just keeps expanding. We're dealing with this in my home country of Canada as well. The government just seems to want to have more power, more control. You know, now in Canada, they're putting carbon taxes on everything. Now there's a new second carbon tax, I believe, and the average household's, wealth is just going down as inflation continues to soar. So, even assuming this debt ceiling fiasco all gets resolved, it goes through. This just seems like another crack in a much larger breakage happening in the economy, in the political system itself. Confidence seems to be shrinking by the day. How can anyone have faith in political leadership in these Western countries? And is there any way to change this seemingly crash course that we're on?
Well, I think that's a big question, but I think that first of all, it comes down to the citizens of the country, whatever country you're in. If you are in a democracy or a supposed democracy, then you have to be able to vote. But people have to get off their lazy duff and go vote and understand what the issues are. But because we are dumbing down our citizens, if you look at the education system in the United States, it is one of the worst. In fact, it's probably the worst of all major nations around. And of course, our parents and grandparents work so hard to make this a great country that suddenly nobody wants to work for it anymore. Nobody wants to make it better. So you continue to vote in the same crap, looking for, reparations, looking for welfare programs. These things are not healthy, and they don't promote capitalism. And let's face it, you may be a capitalist or not. Socialism doesn't work, nor does communism or Marxism. You have to have a capitalism system that keeps people working so that they have a drive to be better and to make things better, instead of trying to defund the police, trying to, change laws, bring in all these ridiculous programs, including all this woke agenda. The countries are falling apart based on the drive of government trying to take control of everything, including the money.
Yeah, very well said. And kind of part and parcel to that is the whole push for the new green economy. Politicians seem to be using climate change. I mentioned the carbon tax in Canada, saying we all have to do our part for climate change. Meanwhile, you got places like India, China, Pakistan burning incredible amounts of coal. How does it make sense for a Canadian person to pay an extra however many cents at the pump? There's just people just don't seem to grasp logic here. Are we at peak ESG here, that this new green economy, this whole climate change agenda, is the pendulum eventually going to swing the other way?
I hope so. This is another way that they destructed the country, our country here for sure, by not exporting oil anymore, by not producing our own oil anymore, by giving up the fracking and shale producing of oil. This whole, first of all, I'm not a believer in climate change. So I'll be clear. Okay. Now, again, I don't care if you are or you're not. Hey, I believe in the freedom of whatever. But if you want to get to a better source of energy, why destroy an entire class of people while you're trying to get there? Right? We should have never given up our control of the oil until we had a better solution. But of course, government wants to steal your money. Government wants a piece of you, and that's just another way to take a piece. But I think we're starting to see some cracks in the armor, especially like in the UK deal. There was 30 companies that were going to, insist on, green stuff. And of course, we've seen 30% of them drop already, including Lloyd's of London the other day, saying, we don't care. This is not the right way to go about things. And I agree that, look, if you want to get to a better source of energy, I have no problem with it. But don't destroy your people while you're getting there. Don't make gas when it should be $2 a gallon, $5 a gallon, plus all the taxes that they had on the gas already. So I think this whole green new energy deal is going to blow up at some point, and I don't know how it's going to blow up, but I don't think it's going to be successful.
And do you think all of this political activism, environmental activism, these people rallying against fossil fuels, do you think ultimately that could lead to higher prices in the future? Because it seems like the agenda is totally not based on reality. Moving forward, most projections from people who I respect and who seem to know what they're talking about say that we're going to continue to need fossil fuels more than ever. And yet all of these political initiatives are coming out to stop drilling, to stop exploration for new sources of oil and gas. Could that ultimately push the price higher in the end?
Well, I think that right now what you're depending on in the United States anyways is Saudi Arabia. When you're dealing with OPEC Plus and you're dealing with those criminals and gangsters, I mean, they're just going to destroy. Now, I've said that they were going to cut production, and I thought they would do it one more time before Memorial Day, which is the holiday here that starts driving season. I would bet there'll be another cut of production this summer. We have in the United States, there's over a 300-year supply without affecting the environment that they can get with ease. Okay. But yet, and that's a current usage, but yet they don't want to do that. But they want to let everybody else burn coal, as you mentioned, and coal is being burned at record numbers now. And considering 47% of the world is China, India, and Pakistan, they're never going to stop burning coal. So what's that going to do to your climate? Again, we look at things backwards, and it's really a very small percentage that makes all the noise. It's like the 10% is making 100% of the noise. And unfortunately, people are too lazy and sit back and don't fight against what's going on, because most people do not believe in what's going on and don't want to pay these prices that we're paying to get to where we are. It's a divide and conquer and separate. That's what they're trying to do.
What's up, guys? Quick break. My name is Jay Martin. I'm the CEO of Cambridge House and the host of the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference. I wanted to quickly point your attention to a link right beneath this video where you can subscribe to our new weekly newsletter. If you want to better understand the minds of the best investors in the resource space, subscribe to this newsletter. I author it personally every Sunday, and I love writing it. Hit that link below to subscribe. All right, back to the interview.
Let's get your thoughts on nuclear energy here as well, because speaking about burning coal, Germany now is burning record amounts of lignite, the dirtiest form of coal, because in some sort of insane move that I cannot fathom how this happened, they're shutting down their perfectly capable nuclear reactors, which of course is one of the cleanest, safest, most effective forms of baseload energy. So how do you see nuclear energy moving forward? Because most nations are actually starting to embrace it. It is starting to get that green label. How do you see nuclear advancing here? And do you think that's bullish for a commodity like uranium?
It can be, but again, we all have that thing in our back of our mind, Chernobyl, the reactors that have happened. Now, again, that wouldn't bother me. I don't think about things like that. I mean, you're talking about one-offs. It's like, worrying about getting in a plane, worrying about a collapse and crashing. We can't worry about everything. We have to do what's best for everything economically and efficiency-wise. And unfortunately, we have too many people fighting. Again, we go to the minority that is winning the battle because they have the ear and the voice of government, which we know that government does nothing but one thing. They create debt. They create heartache for everybody. They are not a benefit of the people. And this is where we have to understand that you have to be very careful. You know, the United States Constitution never meant to have career politicians. Okay. Plus the fact that the federal government was never meant to be the largest employer in the world. It is the government is supposed to be run city, county, state, and the Fed is an overseer. So all of these programs that we're watching are really just dumb. They're really just to hurt people and to allow government to pocket more capital of the hard work of the backs of the middle class.
And just to circle back to nuclear, is uranium a commodity that you trade or invest in, or is that something that's not really on your radar?
I really don't keep it on my radar. It's not a liquid enough commodity for me to trade. I've played around occasionally with the uranium stocks that are out there. But again, that's for me at this point, that's still kind of gambling, but I could certainly see it being a real play. It's just, you know, how many things can I trade? So I want to stay with the more liquid markets.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I'd also like to get your thoughts on the BRICS nations. Are they a legitimate threat? Because we are seeing more and more nations apply for membership in the BRICS. I've had some people say they're just basically a loose think tank and they're not really an official organization. They don't really have a whole lot of power behind them. I've heard others say this could be a legitimate threat to US, both currency hegemony if they create their own currency and kind of dominance of the geopolitical stage, which the US has enjoyed for so long. How do you see this whole situation playing out?
I think everything is always a concern, Jesse. I don't think that you can ever ignore anything. You know, there's a poem that was written by Martin Niemöller, and it's basically, you know, first they came for the tradesman. I wasn't a tradesman, I didn't help. And then they came for the next, and then they came for me, and there was nobody to help. And this is what you're seeing. You know, it starts out very small. I think it's very credible. It's already creating a lot of heartburn. And of course, putting a rush into this digital currency that they're trying to get. We already know that the fiat currency system is the most fraudulent system of anything. It's the biggest Ponzi scheme scam because there's nothing that backs the currency. And I think those nations that are looking into the BRICS are saying, you know what, enough of this already. Let's go back to gold. Let's go back to have something that makes the dollar, my currency, worth something that I know that a central bank cannot devalue my currency in front of us still sitting in my pocket.
So do you think a gold-backed currency is something that other nations may move towards at some point in the future? I'm not sure. It might have been Winston Churchill who said America will do the right thing after they've exhausted all other options. Do you think after, you know, we potentially go through a catastrophic collapse of the US dollar? Let me start by asking you, do you think the US dollar is at risk of collapse or hyperinflation at any point? Some people say it's going to happen tomorrow if you listen to the doomsayers, people like Peter Schiff. And then some people say it's pretty much, this is decades and decades away. So let's start there. Do you think the US dollar is actually in any real danger?
I don't think it's in real danger today, but I think if we continue at the pace we're continuing at, then yes, it could be a real problem. You know, the Biden administration has done so much damage to this country that it's criminal what they've done. It's almost treasonous. And I think that, you know, there's a real problem. But I mean, I don't think anything is tomorrow, right? I think, but over time, if you continue to make this same mistake, then you could have a real problem. And, you know, again, you know, most major empires that collapse after between, you know, 200 to 300 years. Well, we're at 250. And we've got a bunch of lazy people around that don't want to work, that don't want to do anything, that want to work on these movements. And then you've got the prodders who are paying these rioters and these protesters to create havoc. And of course, should we be on the gold standard? Of course we should. They shouldn't. The Bretton Woods Act should have never happened. And if you ask Alan Greenspan, pre being the Fed chair, he was against going off the standard. The minute he became the Fed chair, he was happy thereof it because, of course, what does that tell you? That me, as a Fed chair, can screw the rest of the world because I have total control of the money and I can do whatever I want with it without any backing. So I think that very much so that there's a good chance, hopefully, that we'll get back to something backing a currency.
So I want to get your thoughts now on the broader market, because we're seeing the S&P 500, the Nasdaq, performing and holding up fairly well, albeit there's a few companies there that are holding up the majority. But how much longer are overvalued tech stocks like Nvidia going to rip? This thing just seems to keep going. It seems to not make sense when we look at it from a valuation perspective. There has to be a hangover after the party, but it feels like it's being delayed. Well, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think if we go back and look at the 90s, we saw that coming as well. And of course, the 90s was the roaring 20s of tech stocks flying. And now we're seeing the AI stocks type of flying, which are really supporting the market. And if you look beyond them, the markets are actually down. But I would say, look, I don't like to make major predictions, but if I were to guess right here, although my positions themselves are still long, okay, I think that the tops are in. Okay, I think that we saw the final push up, and I can actually put it to Memorial Day, Monday night into Tuesday. Yesterday's failure showed me some concern. Markets lower again, but I think, look, there'll be rallies, but I think that we're now going to head into that longer term downtrend. I think you're going to start to see more bank failures. There's a lot of issues out there that don't make sense, right? And you can only hold up for so long. And I give you one quick example. If I told you 5 years ago that I could get you 5% for a 3-month CD, okay, people would have dove and jumped at it. They couldn't wait to get in. They were so nervous. Now they're offering 5.25 on a 3-month CD, and people are ignoring it. What does that tell you? We're now in the greed phase, which is usually the end of most big markets.
So in the case of a big market crash and a recession, do you think commodities will fall, like the majority of commodities will fall right along with the broad market? Or could they fall, then rally? Could they actually perform, hold up? What are your thoughts on how commodities would do in that scenario?
Well, historically, they would react very well, but I'm very concerned. As you know, I was very bullish when we talked before on commodities. I'm still kind of behind in the back of my head. I want to be bullish. But watching the price action, I think there's a real case for a deflationary scenario here, which is not good for commodities. If you're watching the grain markets, I mean, I thought grains were going to have a big market to the upside this year. I didn't realize they were going to collapse. And this is a big, big concern because there's no logic behind it when you look at the amount of consumption and the supply and demand. But I would think that if the markets do collapse, the money will flow into the commodities because, listen, money's going to be looking for places to go. And that is typically a natural relationship out of equities into commodities and other places to try to grab return. So I think that they'll be fine. But I am very concerned as of today that they're not performing well. But we'll see when the conjunction of the markets falling where that money is going to go, because I do think that we're at the very beginning of the next big meltdown.
So for somebody who wants to just play it conservatively and preserve their capital in the case of this kind of market meltdown, is it just stay in cash? Is it CDs, money market accounts, T-bills, silver, gold, bullion? What's the best way for someone to protect themselves?
I think it's a combination of all. First of all, I don't think you ever stop really investing if you're an equity investor because, look, history tells us that equities go up 8.5% year over year. So if you're buying something at value it's a company you believe is in your business, great. I think that CDs are a great place to go. I mean, obviously, the banks are guaranteed by the full faith and credit, by the FDIC, as long as you don't have more than X amount of dollars in each account. So I think that's part of it. I think gold and silver are. I think it's always still a blend of what you want to do. I wouldn't be overly aggressive unless I knew how to hedge or protect myself. But if you're looking at a broad picture, I think a mix of assets, understanding that they could all go down together, they could all go up together, they could be mixed, but you have some defensive mechanisms of where money should flow should things happen. But we do know that in the initial time of any meltdown in the market, everything goes down to start with. And then we see where it ends up actually.
And are there any areas of the market right now that you're seeing opportunity in that maybe people aren't taking a close enough look at? We've seen the rise of index investing, of passive investing, and I'm wondering if there's any areas of opportunity for those who are willing to do the due diligence to maybe pick stocks, if there's any area of the market right now that you think could be undervalued or that people aren't paying attention to.
I think value is always fair because the markets are telling what the value is. I think that I would be looking like I would be a buyer of the Russell, the IWM, ETF or the Russell futures. I think that's extremely been beat down and beat hard. If you look at it, it's significantly lower compared to the rest of the markets, which again, a lot of that's been done by this administration that has created and destroyed a lot of small business. But I think overall it will recover. And I if I were going to put on a spread today, I'd sell the Nasdaq, buy the Russell. Okay. Individual stocks right now, I'm more into buying some of the ETFs, like the IWM, like the S&P, the Qs I still own, but I'm not necessarily buying more today. But again, I wouldn't be concerned, but I do think that there will be some mean reversion down on the Qs and up on IWM. And I'm not looking for some individual stocks because the things that I'd be looking at have really exploded far past where I'd like to jump in right now.
Well, Todd, thank you so much for joining us today. Always enlightening to talk to you. For those who'd like to learn more, could you fill us in on BubbaTrading.com and anywhere else you'd like to direct people online?
Absolutely, Jesse, and thank you very much for having me. BubbaTrading.com. If you want to reach out or know more, just email me. You can email me direct at Bubba@BubbaTrading.com, or check out the website. And we're going to be doing a big event on teaching you how to hedge your portfolio so that you can be fully invested at any time, knowing that you have a defensive mechanism to the downside if something goes on. And that's Bubba@BubbaTrading.com.
Great. Well, I'll put all that in the description below. Thank you once again for joining us and hope to do it again.
Jesse, my pleasure. Always look forward to it, and I can't wait to see you again.